Put on the apron, we need someone to serve. My younger sister did not pull me aside to ask a favor. Vanessa blocked my path near the catering doors of the Atlanta ballroom and shoved a stained canvas apron against the silk of my dress. I looked at the rough fabric in my hands and then at her. I had spent 2 hours in traffic driving up from Midtown. I was a guest. I told her that. She crossed her arms. The staffing agency shorted us. We do not have enough people for the head table. Put it on. My mother stepped out from the hallway shadows before I could hand the apron back. Patricia always had a sense for Vanessa's manufactured crises. She stepped close enough that I could smell her heavy floral perfume. She grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin. Do not start this tonight, Alita. This is your sister's special day. If you cannot support her, you can leave. But if you walk out that door, I will cut you out of the family trust by Monday morning. I am not playing games with you. I looked between them. Vanessa lifted her chin. She wanted me to argue. She wanted me to raise my voice and cause a scene in front of the arriving guests. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the wedding videographer hovering near the floral arch. The red recording light on his camera was blinking. It was pointed directly at us. This was not about a staffing shortage. This was a trap. Before I tell you what happened next, I hope you are doing well today. I would love to know what age you are watching from, so please share it in the comments below. Stay with me to see how this one wedding prank exposed a calculated family lie. And please subscribe to Grape Vengeance so you do not miss what my mother tried to do after the reception. I did not yell. I did not storm out. I knew how my mother and sister operated. They created an emergency, demanded compliance, and labeled me the problem if I tried to set a boundary. I had spent years learning to document their tactics instead of reacting to them. I pulled my wrist out of my mother's grip. The threat of the family trust would have terrified me 5 years ago. My mother relied on financial control to keep everyone in line. She paid for Vanessa's cars, her apartments, and this extravagant reception. She assumed I needed her money just as much. I never corrected her. Let her believe she held the leash. I tied the canvas strings around my waist. The white apron hung awkwardly over my navy dress. Patricia smoothed her own gown, and her face shifted instantly back into the gracious mother of the bride. "See, that was not so hard," Vanessa said. She turned on her heel and pushed through the swinging doors into the staging area. I followed her. The kitchen smelled of roasted garlic and heated silver. Caterers moved back and forth between the prep tables. I scanned the room. The catering manager stood near the warmers with a clipboard directing a dozen servers. None of them looked overwhelmed. There was no staffing shortage. They had plenty of people. Vanessa had planned this. She walked over to a staging counter and pointed to a heavy silver tray holding 4 crystal flutes of champagne. "Take that to the head table. Serve Derek first." Derek was the groom. He was a regional director at a logistics firm. I had met him exactly once at a brief family dinner where Vanessa had spent the entire evening talking over him. I knew very little about him, and he knew even less about me. I picked up the tray. The metal felt cold and heavy against my palms. I understood what Vanessa was doing. She wanted footage of her older sister serving her. She needed me to look small and defeated to fit whatever story she had been telling her new husband and his family. I pushed the kitchen doors open and walked into the ballroom. The crystal chandeliers cast a bright, unforgiving light across the room. The bass from the sound system vibrated through the floorboards. Guests sitting at the outer table stopped talking as I passed. I heard a few confused whispers. Someone pointed. I kept my eyes forward and my face neutral. I focused on the mechanics of the room. I noted where the cameras were positioned. 2 on tripods near the dance floor, 1 roving operator moving toward the head table. They were triangulating the shot. I approached the head table. Vanessa was already seated adjusting her veil. Derek was speaking to his best man. I kept my breathing steady. I did not cry. I did not let my hands shake. I carried the tray toward the groom, waiting for my sister's trap to spring. I walked toward the head table with the heavy silver tray balanced in my hands. The crystal flutes clinked softly against each other with every step I took. The roving camera operator backpedaled ahead of me, keeping his lens focused right on my face. Vanessa had clearly given him specific instructions. She wanted this captured from every angle. I kept my posture straight. I did not look down. I did not let my shoulders round in defeat. My mother sat at the adjacent family table. I could feel her watching me. Patricia wanted me broken. She needed me compliant. She had spent my entire adult life trying to force me into a mold I outgrew at 18. Vanessa leaned close to Derek as I approached. She wore a custom silk gown that cost more than my first car. She reached for his arm, her acrylic nails resting lightly on his dark suit jacket. Derek was a regional director at a major logistics firm headquartered right here in Atlanta. He had climbed the corporate ladder quickly over the past 3 years. Vanessa loved bragging about his salary. She had spent the last 12 months telling everyone in our extended family how successful her fiancé was. At the same time, she had spent the last 12 months telling Derek that I was a disaster. She told him I was unemployed. She told him I was a bitter older sister who could not hold down a job and survived on our mother's charity. Derek believed her. He had no reason not to. We had only met once at a brief crowded dinner, and Vanessa had spent that entire evening speaking over him, ensuring we never had a direct conversation. She controlled the flow of information. She always did. I reached the edge of the head table. The camera operator stopped positioning himself to catch both my face and Vanessa's reaction. Vanessa tilted her head. Her smile was sharp and practiced. She looked at the canvas apron tied over my navy dress. She looked at the tray in my hands. She was ready to deliver the line she had prepared. She wanted to say something condescending, something that sounded like pity but functioned like poison. She opened her mouth to speak. I extended the tray toward Derek first. That was proper service protocol, and I was going to play the part exactly as directed. Derek turned in his chair to take a glass. His hand reached out. Then his eyes met mine. He did not reach the glass. His hand stopped in midair. The color drained from his face. His skin went pale. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The polished, confident groom vanished. He looked like a man who had just stepped onto a highway and seen a truck bearing down on him. He stood up. He moved so fast his knees hit the edge of the table. The heavy wooden chair scraped loudly against the polished hardwood floor. The harsh grinding sound echoed through the ballroom, cutting through the low music and the murmur of the guests. Several people at the nearby tables stopped talking and turned to look. "Alida," he said my name. His voice was breathless, tight with panic. Vanessa frowned. The script in her head had just derailed. She did not like losing control of a scene. She reached up and tugged at his sleeve. She offered a light, artificial laugh designed for the microphone. "Derek, sit down," Vanessa said. "Do not speak to the help. She is just doing her job." Derek did not look at her. He did not sit down. He kept his eyes locked on my face. He looked at the white canvas apron. He looked at the catering tray. He looked at the camera operator standing 3 feet away. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Vanessa pulled his sleeve harder. "Derek, I said sit down. You are ruining the shot." Derek pulled his arm away from her grip. He turned to his new bride, his face pale and slick with sudden sweat. "That is my CEO." He did not whisper it. He said it loudly enough that the words carried across the space between the tables. The ballroom went dead silent. The music seemed to fade into the background. The low hum of conversation evaporated. Dozens of guests turned their heads toward the head table. Vanessa stared at him. Her mouth hung open. Her hand remained suspended in the air where his sleeve had been. The heavy silver fork she had been holding slipped from her fingers. It hit her china plate with a sharp, ringing clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You're what?" Vanessa breathed the words out. Her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. Derek turned back to me. He looked terrified. He worked for Apex Logistics. It was a firm I founded in my mid-20s and built from a small regional dispatcher into a lucrative supply chain network. I owned the company. I signed the checks. I approved the regional director promotions. Derek had been promoted 6 months ago. I had signed off on his metrics personally. I kept my private life and my business strictly separated, which was why I never realized the ambitious director in the Southeastern Division was dating my estranged sister. He had seen my face in corporate newsletters, quarterly reports, and company-wide video broadcasts. He knew exactly who I was. I did not yell. I did not gloat. I did not throw the champagne in her face. I did not need to perform for the camera. I simply lowered the silver tray and set it calmly on the white linen tablecloth. The crystal flutes clinked one final time as they settled. I looked at Derek. I gave him a single professional nod. "Good evening, Derek. Congratulations on your wedding." I turned my head and looked at my sister. The smug satisfaction was gone from her face. Her grand humiliation had just imploded. She had spent months crafting a lie. She had told her husband I was a failure. She had told him I lived off our mother. Now the man she just married was standing at attention, staring at me like I held his entire future in my hands. Because I did. I glanced toward the family table. My mother sat frozen. Patricia had spent the last hour orchestrating this moment. She had threatened my inheritance. She had forced the apron into my hands. Her practiced, gracious smile was shattered. She looked at Derek, then at me, her mind racing to understand how she had lost control of the room. She did not know about my company. I had learned early in life never to share my financial successes with my mother. If Patricia knew you had money, she found a way to attach herself to it. She believed I worked a mid-level corporate job. She had no idea I owned the entire operation. The power dynamic in the room inverted in a matter of seconds. Vanessa realized her husband was looking at me with genuine fear and respect. Derek realized his new wife was a liar. He realized the unemployed bitter sister he had been warned about was the architect of his career. He realized his bride had just forced the founder of his company to act as a waitress in front of a camera crew. The human resources implications alone were enough to end his career, and he knew it. I unfastened the strings of the canvas apron. I let it fall from my waist. I did not drop it on the floor. I folded it neatly and placed it directly on top of Vanessa's dinner plate. I looked at Derek again. "I will expect you in the office on Monday morning. We have matters to discuss." I turned away from the head table and began walking toward the exit. I did not run. I walked with the slow, measured pace of someone who owned the room. The guests parted for me. I could hear my mother's chair scrape against the floor as she rushed to intercept me. Patricia was moving fast, desperate to contain the damage. She was going to try to rewrite reality before I reached the doors. She was going to try to make me the villain again. But my mind was already moving past her. As I walked, I thought about the caterer's bill. I thought about the extravagant floral arrangements and the crystal chandeliers. I thought about the strange banking alerts I had ignored last week. Vanessa had lied about my job. What else had she lied to Derek about to fund this event? The real conflict had not even started. I did not make it halfway across the ballroom before my mother caught me. Patricia moved with terrifying speed for a woman wearing a floor-length sequined gown. Her hand clamped onto my bicep like a vice. Her fingernails bit through the thin silk of my sleeve. Behind me, the microphone picked up Vanessa's voice. My sister was already trying to rewrite reality. Her tone was high and breathless, laced with fake panic. "Derek, please," Vanessa said. "It was just a joke. A silly family prank. Alita takes everything so seriously. You know how she gets. She is always trying to make herself the center of attention." I stopped walking, but I did not turn around to look at Vanessa. I looked down at my mother's hand gripping my arm. Patricia leaned in close. Her face was flushed, the veins standing out beneath the heavy layer of expensive foundation on her neck. "You are ruining the wedding," Patricia hissed. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the venom in it was unmistakable. "I told you not to cause a scene. You are embarrassing your sister in front of her new in-laws." I did not cause a scene. I served the champagne exactly as requested. Patricia tightened her grip. "Turn around right now. Go through the service exit behind the kitchen. Do not let anyone else see you. Walk out the back door and drive home. We will deal with your behavior tomorrow." She was trying to hide me. If I left through the service exit, it would look like I was ashamed. It would look like I was fleeing. It would give Vanessa the perfect opportunity to spin the narrative. She would tell Derek and his family that I had a mental breakdown and had to be escorted out by the catering staff. She would use my quiet exit as proof of my instability. I looked directly into my mother's eyes. "Let go of my arm." Patricia's jaw clenched. "Do not defy me, Alita. I will freeze your trust fund." "I have not touched that trust fund since I was 22 years old. I stepped closer to her, forcing her to look up at me. "You do not control my finances, you do not control my career, and you certainly do not control which door I use. Let go." Patricia saw something in my expression that she had never seen before. The realization hit her that the leverage she relied on for a decade was completely worthless. Her hand dropped from my arm. Her practiced, gracious facade cracked, leaving only raw, silent fury. She stepped back, realizing that the guests at the surrounding tables were watching our every move. I turned my back on her and continued toward the main exit. I did not rush. I kept my head held high. I pushed the heavy oak doors open and stepped out into the grand foyer. The music from the ballroom faded, replaced by the quiet hum of the building's air conditioning system. I did not go to the valet right away. I had one more stop to make. I walked down the carpeted hallway toward the venue management office. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and walked inside. The event manager, a man in a crisp, dark suit named Marcus, looked up from his desk. He had been monitoring the reception timeline on his computer. He looked surprised to see a guest in his private office, especially one who had just caused a major disruption. "Miss Miller," Marcus said, standing up quickly, "is there a problem in the ballroom?" "There is about to be a significant legal dispute," I told him. My voice was calm, steady, and entirely professional. "I am formally requesting that you preserve all security footage and vendor recordings from the ballroom, the kitchen, and the catering corridors, effective immediately." Marcus blinked. He clearly expected a complaint about cold food or a seating arrangement. He did not expect a preservation order. "I am sorry, ma'am, but I cannot simply hand over venue security footage without a police report or a subpoena." "I did not ask you to hand it over. I am asking you to lock the files. Do not overwrite them. Do not allow anyone from the wedding party to access or delete them." I placed my business card on his desk. He glanced down, reading the gold-embossed letters identifying me as the Chief Executive Officer of Apex Logistics. He recognized the company name. Most corporate professionals in Atlanta did. "My sister and my mother orchestrated a targeted harassment incident using your staff and your facilities. I noticed 3 stationary cameras and 1 roving videographer capturing the event. I need your confirmation that the digital assets belonging to this venue will not be destroyed. If those files disappear, my corporate counsel will hold this venue liable for destruction of evidence." Marcus swallowed hard. The polite customer service smile vanished, replaced by nervous compliance. He reached out and tapped a command on his keyboard. "I understand, Miss Miller. I will lock the servers right now. The footage will be archived. No one will touch it." "Thank you, Marcus. Expect to hear from my attorney by Monday afternoon." I turned and left the office. I walked out to the valet stand and handed the attendant my ticket. The humid Georgia night air clung to my skin. I took a deep breath, letting the tension slowly leave my shoulders. While I waited for my car, my phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text message from my aunt, then another from a cousin, then a third from a family friend. The smear campaign had already begun. Vanessa and Patricia were working the room, spinning the story faster than I could drive home. They were undoubtedly telling everyone that I had suffered a jealous breakdown, that I had tried to ruin the toast, and that Derek was simply confused by my erratic behavior. My family relied on social pressure. They used gossip and isolation to break people down. Growing up, if I ever disagreed with Patricia, she would spend days calling every relative to tell them how difficult I was. By the time I tried to defend myself, the entire family had already convicted me. They expected me to panic. They expected me to spend the weekend crying, calling relatives and begging them to believe my side of the story. I was not going to play their emotional game. Let them have the gossip. Gossip was fragile. It shattered the moment it collided with hard facts. The valet brought my car around. I tipped him and climbed into the driver's seat and pulled out onto the main road, heading toward Midtown. The drive gave me time to think. The pieces of the puzzle were shifting into place. Vanessa had humiliated me, yes. But Vanessa was lazy. She did not plan elaborate pranks just for the fun of it. She planned things when she needed a distraction. She planned things when she needed to establish a specific narrative. Why did she need to convince Derek and his family that I was an unemployed, unstable burden? My mind went back to the financial alerts I had dismissed earlier that week. I had received 2 automated emails regarding a credit inquiry on an old personal bank account. I had assumed they were spam or a simple banking error because I had not used that specific account in years. I kept most of my assets tied up in corporate trusts and secure investment portfolios. But Patricia knew about that old account. She had helped me set it up when I was in college. She still had the original routing numbers. I parked my car in the secure garage beneath my condominium building. I rode the elevator up to the penthouse floor. I unlocked my door, dropped my keys on the counter, and kicked off my heels. I did not bother changing out of the silk dress. I walked straight into my home office and opened my laptop. I needed to see the numbers. Numbers did not lie. Numbers did not cry in front of a wedding photographer. I logged into my secure banking portal. I navigated past my primary corporate accounts and dug into the archived personal files. I found the old college account. I clicked on the recent transaction history. The screen loaded. My breath caught in my throat. The account was empty. But it was not just empty. It was overdrawn by a staggering sum tied to a newly opened revolving line of credit. I scrolled down my eyes, scanning the transfer logs. Several large sums had been routed out over the past 3 months. $30,000 to an event design company, $25,000 to a luxury catering service, $15,000 to a high-end floral boutique. The dates aligned perfectly with Vanessa's wedding planning schedule. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen. The humiliation in the ballroom was not just an act of cruelty. It was a smokescreen. Vanessa and Patricia had stolen $80,000 to fund the wedding. They needed me to look crazy and unstable tonight so that when I finally discovered the missing money, no one would believe me. They were building a preempted defense. I did not feel sad. I felt a cold, dangerous clarity settle over my mind. They thought I was the same frightened girl they could control with threats and gossip. They had no idea they had just defrauded the CEO of a major corporation, and I was about to dismantle their entire lives. The glow of my laptop screen illuminated the dark office in my condominium. I stared at the banking portal. The initial shock of seeing the old college account overdrawn had faded, replaced by a cold, calculating focus. An overdrawn student checking account could not cover $80,000 in wedding expenses. That required a credit instrument. I needed to know exactly how my mother had secured that kind of capital. I clicked through the security verification prompts, bypassing the standard dashboard to access my comprehensive financial portfolio. I watched the loading circle spin for 2 seconds before the deeper architecture of my assets appeared on the screen. I traced the origin of the newly attached revolving credit line. The truth glared back at me in stark black and white text. The credit line was not isolated to my personal banking. It was tethered directly to the secondary collateral holdings of Apex Logistics. Patricia had not just stolen my money, she had committed corporate wire fraud. My fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. I pulled the digital receipts from the bank server. I needed to understand the mechanics of the theft. Patricia used to work as a commercial loan officer back in the late 90s. She understood banking infrastructure. She knew how financial institutions linked dormant profiles to active assets. When I was 18 years old, she insisted on helping me open my first checking account. She told me she wanted to teach me financial responsibility. She kept the master login credentials. I assumed it was a mother protecting her daughter. Instead, she was planting a seed for future leverage. She had used those old credentials to bypass the primary security protocols. Once inside the outdated profile, she submitted an application for a backdoor line of credit using my Social Security number and linking it to the corporate tax identification number of my logistics firm. I downloaded the first batch of transaction histories. The routing numbers told a very clear story. 4 weeks ago, a payment of $40,000 went to the luxury event venue in Buckhead. 2 weeks later, another transfer of $20,000 cleared for a high-end catering service. The final $20,000 did not go to a wedding vendor. It was funneled directly into a joint checking account shared by Patricia and Vanessa. My sister had planned an extravagant, lavish reception. The total cost easily exceeded $150,000. Derek, the groom, came from a modest background. He likely believed Vanessa's wealthy parents were footing the bill for the crystal chandeliers, the silk linens, and the 5-course dinner. He had no idea his new wife was funding her dream wedding with stolen corporate assets. The realization hit me with sudden, sharp clarity. The canvas apron, the forced servitude, the videographer hovering near the floral arch, the humiliation at the reception was not just petty sibling rivalry, it was a calculated distraction. Vanessa knew I would eventually check my financial statements. She knew the fraud would be discovered. She needed a preemptive defense. If I went to the police and accused my sister of stealing $80,000, Vanessa and Patricia would be ready. They would produce the video footage from the wedding, they would show the investigators our relatives, and Derek a recording of me serving champagne in a stained apron. They would frame me as the bitter, jealous older sister who suffered a mental breakdown at the reception. They would argue that my financial accusations were the delusional rants of an unstable woman trying to ruin her sister's happiness. By painting me as a crazy, subservient failure on camera, Vanessa was building an insurance policy against her own crimes. She needed the world to see me as broken, so no one would believe I was actually a successful chief executive capable of uncovering a complex wire fraud scheme. They thought they had outsmarted me. They thought I would spend the night crying in my apartment, overwhelmed by the public embarrassment. I did not shed a single tear. I did not pick up my phone to call the police. Calling the authorities tonight would be a mistake. A premature police visit would tip them off. It would give Patricia time to wipe her computer, destroy the tablet she used to forge the applications, and coordinate a cover story with Vanessa. I needed to secure the evidence before they even knew I was looking. I opened a new, heavily encrypted folder on my desktop. I named it with a simple numerical date code. I began downloading every piece of digital evidence. First, I pulled the IP access logs from the bank's security server. The log displayed the exact geographic location where the fraudulent credit application was submitted. The IP address traced directly to the internet router inside Patricia's house in Alpharetta. That single line of code destroyed any claim that a random identity thief had hacked my profile. My mother had executed the theft from her own living room. I saved the log file into the encrypted vault. Next, I opened the digital signature attached to the credit approval form. It was a crude electronic imitation of my handwriting. Patricia had traced the loop of my first name, but the angle was wrong. It was a sloppy forgery born of arrogance. She assumed I would never look closely enough to spot the difference. I took a high-resolution screenshot of the forged document and added it to the secure folder. I spent the next 2 hours tracking every digital breadcrumb. I traced the routing numbers, the merchant identification codes, and the timestamp transfer approvals. I exported the data into clean, undeniable spreadsheets, facts without emotion, data without drama. The silence of my condo wrapped around me. The city of Atlanta slept beyond my floor-to-ceiling windows, but my mind was racing ahead to the coming week. I had the evidence. I had the trap prepared. Now I needed to decide how to spring it. Vanessa had built her entire relationship with Derek on a foundation of lies. She told him I was a failure. She told him her family was wealthy. She used funds stolen from his employer to pay for the roof over his head at the reception. Derek was the wild card in this equation. He was a regional director at my company. Technically, his new wife had just defrauded the firm that signed his paychecks. If the corporate board discovered the theft before I managed the fallout, Derek could be implicated as an accessory. He could lose his career, his reputation, and his freedom. But I remembered the look on his face when I handed him that glass of champagne, the sudden lack of color in his cheeks, the genuine terror in his eyes when he stood up and scraped his chair against the hardwood floor. Derek did not know about the fraud. He was a pawn in Vanessa's game. She had used his ambition and his trust to secure a lifestyle she could not afford. If I wanted to dismantle Vanessa's false reality, I could not just hand the files to the police. I had to tear down the facade she had built for her husband. I had to confront the groom. Tomorrow was Monday. Derek would walk into the logistics headquarters expecting to be fired for the scene at the wedding. He would be terrified of facing his chief executive. He would be vulnerable, confused, and desperate to save his job. I closed my laptop. The screen went dark, reflecting my own calm expression. I was not going to fire Derek. I was going to turn him into my star witness. I set my alarm for 5 in the morning. I needed to be at the office before anyone else arrived. I needed to arrange a meeting with my corporate attorney and the head of human resources. The family dispute was over. The corporate audit was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with the sterile hum of the air conditioning system sweeping through the executive floor of Apex Logistics. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the main conference room, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The glass walls of the room offered a clear view of the elevator banks. My corporate attorney, David, sat at the long mahogany table reviewing a printed stack of financial logs. Next to him sat Evelyn, my head of human resources. Neither of them spoke. The gravity of the situation required no extra conversation. We were no longer dealing with a bitter family rivalry. We were handling a multi-thousand-dollar corporate theft. The elevator doors parted at exactly 8 in the morning. Derek stepped out. He looked like a man walking toward his own execution. The confident, polished groom from Saturday night had completely vanished. His suit hung slightly loose on his frame. His face was gray, and a thin layer of sweat shone on his forehead. He carried his company-issued briefcase with a white-knuckled grip. Derek had climbed the corporate ladder fast. He came from a working-class neighborhood in Gwinnett County, paying his way through night school to earn his degree. He valued his career above everything else because he had built it from scratch. Now, he clearly believed he was about to lose it all. Evelyn stood up and opened the glass door. "Derek," she said, her voice entirely neutral, "please come in." Derek walked into the room. He did not look at David. He looked directly at me. He expected me to scream. He expected me to hand him a termination letter and call security to escort him out of the building. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. "Alita," he started, his voice cracking. "Miss Miller, I swear to you I had no idea who you were until you handed me that tray. If I had known Vanessa was treating you that way, I never would have allowed it." I raised my hand, cutting him off. "Sit down, Derek." He collapsed into the leather chair opposite David. He kept his hands flat on the table, trying to stop them from shaking. "I am not here to punish you for a canvas apron," I told him. I walked over and took the seat at the head of the table. "What happened at the reception was a calculated performance. Vanessa wanted you to see me as a subservient failure. She needed you to believe I was unstable. Today we are going to discuss why." I slid a thick manila folder across the polished wood. It stopped directly in front of his hands. "Open it." Derek hesitated, wiping his damp palms on his trousers before flipping the cover open. The first page was the venue invoice. The second page was the catering receipt. The third page contained the IP tracking logs and the forged electronic signature. Derek stared at the numbers. He blinked, trying to make sense of the financial data. "These are the wedding bills," he said softly. "I do not understand. Vanessa told me her parents paid for the reception. She said her mother cashed out an old investment fund to cover the venue." "Vanessa lied," I replied. My voice remained steady, offering no emotional comfort. "My mother did not cash out an investment fund. Patricia used a dormant set of my personal banking credentials to access a backdoor line of credit. She linked that credit line to the secondary collateral holdings of this logistics firm." Derek stopped breathing. His eyes darted from the paper to my face. "Your wife and her mother committed wire fraud," I continued. "They stole $80,000 from this company to pay for your wedding. The event you attended on Saturday was funded by stolen corporate assets." Derek stared at the forged signature on the screen printout. The reality of his situation crashed into him. He had married a stranger. The wealthy, carefree woman he thought he loved was a fiction. Vanessa had played the part of a rich girl to attract a successful corporate director, building an elaborate illusion on a foundation of theft. Now the woman sitting across from him was not just his angry sister-in-law, she was the chief executive of the company his wife had just defrauded. "Oh my God," Derek whispered. He covered his mouth with his hand. His chest heaved. "I did not know, Alita, I swear on my life, I did not know a single thing about this money. She told me her family was loaded. She told me you were a jealous burden who refused to work." "I know what she told you," I said. "She isolated you from the truth. She needed to paint me as a crazy, bitter woman so that if I ever discovered the missing funds, you would dismiss my accusations as the rants of a jealous sibling. It was a preemptive defense strategy." David, my attorney, leaned forward. "Derek, you are a regional director at Apex Logistics. Your wife has defrauded your employer. From a legal standpoint, you are currently standing on very dangerous ground. The authorities will look at your new marriage and assume you are an accessory to the fraud." Derek shook his head violently. No, I had nothing to do with this. I will give you my bank statements. I will give you my tax returns. You can check every account I own. I have never seen these routing numbers before in my life." I watched him closely. His panic was raw and genuine. He was not trying to protect Vanessa. He was trying to survive her. "I am not going to fire you, Derek," I said. He looked up, tears of sheer relief pooling in his eyes. "But you are no longer just an employee," I continued. "You are a material witness in a felony corporate investigation. If you want to keep your career and your freedom, you will cooperate fully with my legal team. You will not warn Vanessa. You will not warn my mother. You will distance yourself immediately and let us handle the prosecution." "I will do whatever you need," Derek said instantly. His loyalty shifted in a matter of seconds, abandoning the toxic marriage that had almost destroyed his life. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his personal cell phone. He opened his briefcase and pulled out his company-issued laptop. He pushed both devices across the table toward David. "Take them," Derek said. "Search my texts, search my emails, check the cloud drives. Prove to yourself that I never touched that money. I want nothing to do with what she did." Evelyn gathered the devices. "The corporate forensics team will image these drives immediately," she noted. "We will have a preliminary report by this afternoon to clear your involvement." Derek nodded, rubbing his temples. He looked exhausted, carrying the weight of a shattered life. "I need to call a divorce lawyer," he muttered quietly. "I need to get my daughter away from that woman." I paused. My pen hovered over my notepad. "Your daughter?" Derek looked up, confusion mixing with his grief. "Yes, Sophia. She is 14. She is from my previous relationship. Vanessa has been playing the perfect stepmother for the past year. She even made Sophia part of the wedding ceremony." I looked at David, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Vanessa despised children. She had always complained about the inconvenience of other people's kids. Playing the perfect stepmother did not fit her profile unless she was getting something out of it. My sister never did anything without a transactional motive. Evelyn returned to the room an hour later holding a secured tablet. The forensics team had finished a preliminary sweep of Derek's synced cloud accounts. They had found no evidence linking him to the wire fraud. However, Evelyn said, her expression grim, they found something else on a shared household drive Vanessa linked to Derek's network. She placed the tablet on the table and pressed play. The screen showed a video recording of a teenage girl sitting on the floor of a bedroom crying uncontrollably, struggling to catch her breath. It was a severe anxiety attack. Behind the camera, Vanessa's voice could be heard asking invasive prompting questions, urging the girl to cry harder for the lens. Derek let out a choked gasp. "That is Sophia. Why was she filming my daughter like that?" Evelyn swiped to the next file. It was a digital contract. Vanessa had established a private, monetized social media channel. She was selling sponsored content and pitching a reality television pilot based on her life as a savior stepmom dealing with a troubled teen. She was broadcasting Sophia's private medical and emotional struggles to thousands of strangers for profit. The stolen wedding money was just the beginning. Vanessa was operating a much darker machine, and she had trapped a 14-year-old girl inside it. The video on the tablet continued to play, filling the silent conference room with the sound of a child gasping for air. I watched the screen. A teenage girl sat huddled on a plush bedroom rug, her knees pulled tight against her chest. Her face was flushed red, tears streaming down her cheeks as she struggled to breathe. Behind the camera lens, my sister's voice sounded soft, layered with a sickening kind of artificial sympathy. "Tell the followers how hard today was," Sophia Vanessa coaxed from behind the phone. "Look at the camera. Tell them why you feel so broken right now." The girl shook her head, hiding her face in her hands. "Please stop filming," she choked out. "Just one more minute, sweetie," Vanessa replied, her tone sharpening just a fraction. "There are other girls out there who need to see this. You are helping them. Keep looking up." Derek stared at the tablet, his hands trembling. He reached out and slammed his palm against the screen, pausing the playback. The sudden silence in the glass-walled office felt heavy. His shoulders collapsed. He lowered his head toward the mahogany table covering the back of his neck with both hands. "She told me they were doing breathing exercises," he whispered. The words barely made it past his throat. "She told me Sophia was finally opening up to her." Evelyn swiped the screen, pulling up the account analytics the forensics team had extracted from the shared drive. "This is a restricted social media channel," Evelyn explained. "It operates behind a paywall. Your wife has branded herself as the savior stepmom. She charges a monthly subscription fee for access to these vulnerable moments. We also found affiliate links for anxiety supplements and sponsored content from mental health apps, all using Sophia's image." I leaned back in my chair. A cold, familiar anger spread through my chest. The stolen $80,000 suddenly felt trivial. Wire fraud was a crime of greed, but this was a crime of exploitation. Vanessa was farming a child's trauma for cash and internet clout. Derek lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot. Sophia has severe social anxiety. It started 3 years ago when her biological mother moved across the country and stopped calling. Vanessa stepped in right after we started dating. She bought Sophia clothes, took her to get her nails done, and acted like the perfect maternal figure. I thought she was saving my daughter. I thought she loved her. She loves the audience, I corrected him. She loves the narrative. I recognized the pattern instantly. It was the exact same blueprint our mother Patricia had used on me for 2 decades. When I was a teenager struggling with dyslexia, Patricia did not hire a private tutor to help me succeed. She complained to every neighbor, teacher, and relative about how exhausting it was to raise a slow child. She thrived on their pity. She built her entire social identity around being a long-suffering martyr burdened by a defective daughter. Vanessa had learned from the master. She found a vulnerable girl, manufactured crises, and placed herself in the center of the frame as the heroic savior. Sophia is trapped inside a content machine, I said, keeping my voice steady to ground him. Your wife is treating her like a prop. If she is doing this behind a paywall, she is gearing up for something much bigger. David, my corporate attorney, adjusted his glasses. He reviewed the digital contract files Evelyn had provided. Alita is right. These documents include non-disclosure agreements and release forms drafted for a minor. There is also a preliminary pitch deck attached to an email thread with a minor cable television network. Vanessa is trying to sell a reality television pilot based on her life managing a troubled teen. She is using your daughter to secure a broadcast contract. Derek stood up, pacing the length of the conference room. He grabbed his hair, his breathing ragged. I have to go home. I have to get Sophia out of that apartment right now. I will break the door down if I have to. Sit down, Derek, I instructed. My tone left no room for argument. He stopped pacing and looked at me. If you storm into that apartment shouting accusations, Vanessa will turn on her camera, I warned him. She will film you yelling. She will call the police and claim you are threatening her. She will file a protective order and you will lose access to your daughter. You cannot fight an illusion with raw emotion. You have to fight it with paper. I slid a fresh notepad across the table toward him. I handed him a pen. You are going to hire the most ruthless family law attorney in Fulton County, I told him. You will file for an emergency ex parte custody order this afternoon, citing emotional abuse and unauthorized commercial exploitation of a minor. You will use these video files as Exhibit A. Derek gripped the pen. Can I do that without a divorce filing? You will be filing for annulment, David clarified, pulling a blank legal pad toward himself. The marriage was predicated on fraudulent inducement. She lied about her finances. She committed a felony using your employer's network, and she is exploiting your sole dependent. A judge will sign the emergency injunction before dinner. I watched Derek write down the instructions. The panic in his eyes was slowly hardening into resolve. The blind devotion he had shown his new bride just 48 hours ago had burned away, leaving a fiercely protective father. There is one more thing, I said. You need to officially revoke all media releases involving Sophia. Draft a formal cease and desist letter. Send it to Vanessa's email, her physical address, and the production company listed in that pitch deck. Make it clear that any further distribution of the child's image will result in a massive civil lawsuit. Cut off the supply chain. Derek nodded, writing furiously. Thank you. I do not know why you are helping me after what she did to you at the reception. Because you are the collateral damage, I answered truthfully. My sister stole my money to fund a pilot episode for a television show. She forced me into an apron because she needed a villain for her storyline. She used your daughter's tears because she needed sympathy. We are dismantling this system today. Evelyn gathered the printed financial logs. The forensics team has confirmed your devices are clean, Derek. You are cleared of any involvement in the corporate theft. You need to leave the building through the private executive garage. Go straight to a law firm. Do not answer Vanessa's texts. Do not answer her calls. Derek packed his laptop and phone into his briefcase. He looked at me one last time, offering a firm, silent nod of gratitude before hurrying out the glass doors. I sat alone at the head of the conference table. The sun was rising higher over the Atlanta skyline, casting long shadows across the boardroom floor. The $80,000 Vanessa stole was significant, but it was just money. Apex Logistics generated that amount in a single afternoon of freight routing. Recovering the funds was secondary. The real objective was destroying the false reality my family had built to trap everyone around them. David closed his legal folders. "Do you want me to contact the district attorney regarding the wire fraud?" "Not yet," I told him. "If we call the authorities now, my mother will spin a story about a banking error. She will hire a high-priced defense lawyer to tie the investigation up in red tape for months. I need her to admit to the theft on the record." David raised an eyebrow. "How do you plan to get Patricia to confess to a felony?" I looked at the glowing screen of my smartwatch. My mother operated on fear. By now, the venue manager would have called Vanessa to demand the remaining payment for the catering services. Vanessa would have discovered that the fraudulent credit line was frozen. The panic would be setting in. They would know I found the missing money. She will come to me, I predicted. She always tries to bribe her way out of a corner. Right on cue, the sleek black phone on the conference table buzzed. The caller ID flashed the name of the main lobby receptionist. I pressed the speaker button. "Yes, Sarah, Miss Miller." The receptionist's voice sounded strained. "I apologize for the interruption. There is a woman in the lobby demanding to see you. She bypassed the initial security desk. She says she is your mother, and she is refusing to leave until you speak with her. She is causing quite a disruption near the elevators." "Let her up," I commanded. The line clicked off. David stood gathering his briefcases. "Do you want me to stay for this meeting?" "No," I replied, standing up to smooth the fabric of my tailored suit jacket. "This is a family matter. I will handle it in my private office." I walked out of the conference room and headed down the corridor toward my suite. I knew exactly what Patricia was going to do. She was going to switch from the aggressive tyrant who threatened my inheritance into the wounded, misunderstood victim. She would offer me something shiny to make the fraud disappear. I tapped the small, unassuming button on the side of my smartwatch, activating the voice memo application. Georgia law permitted one-party recording consent. My mother was about to hand me the final nail for her own coffin, and she had no idea the trap was already set. I stood behind my heavy mahogany desk, waiting for the inevitable. The red recording dot on my smartwatch blinked silent and steady. Georgia law required only one person to consent to a recording, and I had certainly given my consent. The heavy glass door to my executive suite swung open without a knock. Patricia marched in. She wore a tailored beige suit, but her usual immaculate presentation was cracking. Her hair looked hurried. Her breathing was shallow. She shoved past my executive assistant, slamming the thick door shut behind her to ensure no one outside could hear. "You froze the accounts," Patricia snapped. She did not bother with a greeting. Her voice was high and tight with panic. "The venue manager just called Vanessa. They are threatening to cancel the caterers for the post-wedding brunch. They said the final payment bounced." I kept my face entirely blank. I leaned back against the edge of my desk and crossed my arms. "I did not freeze your accounts," I corrected her calmly. "I froze my corporate credit line, the one you illegally accessed using my old college banking credentials." Patricia stopped pacing. Her aggressive posture dissolved instantly. It was a terrifyingly smooth transition. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes softened, brimming with manufactured tears. She took a step toward me, holding out her hands like a wounded bird asking for shelter. "Oh, Alida," she sighed, letting her voice tremble. "Please do not use words like illegal. It was just a family misunderstanding, a simple mistake. I needed to ensure your sister had a beautiful day, and things simply got out of hand." "A mistake is forgetting to pay a utility bill," I replied. "Applying for a commercial loan using a stolen Social Security number is a federal crime." Patricia waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away a minor annoyance. "You are being overly dramatic. I raised you. I clothed you. I put a roof over your head for 18 years. Do you have any idea how much that costs in today's economy? You owe us. I just moved some numbers around on a screen. You have millions of dollars sitting in those corporate accounts. You do not even need the money. Vanessa needed it for her future." She opened her expensive leather handbag and pulled out a folded manila envelope. She placed it carefully on the glass surface of my desk. "I brought you something," she said, her tone dripping with artificial sweetness. "Do you remember the family cabin up in North Georgia, the one by the lake? Your father left it in my name. I brought the deed. I will sign it over to you today. It is yours, free and clear." I stared at the envelope. I knew all about the North Georgia cabin. It was a rotting, neglected property with a collapsed roof, a flooded basement, and 5 years of unpaid property taxes attached to it. It was a financial liability, not a generous gift. Patricia was trying to hand me her garbage and call it gold. She actually thought I was desperate for her approval. She assumed a crumb of inherited real estate would blind me to the reality of her theft. I needed her to state the exact nature of her crime clearly for the microphone on my wrist. I needed to guide the conversation to extract the facts. "Let me understand this," I said, keeping my tone perfectly even. "You want to trade me a cabin in exchange for paying off Vanessa's wedding debt?" Patricia nodded eagerly, her eyes lighting up at the prospect of an easy resolution. "Exactly. You just pay the remaining balance to the venue today. Tell the bank it was an authorized family expense and drop these silly fraud accusations. We can put this whole ugly weekend behind us. You can be part of the family again." "I cannot just tell the bank I authorized it," I pressed, moving my wrist slightly closer to her. "The fraud department will want to know exactly how the funds were moved. They need to know who initiated the transfer and how the security barriers were bypassed." Patricia sighed, clearly frustrated by my lack of immediate compliance. She hated explaining herself. "I already told you I logged into your old checking profile using the master password. I clicked the application link for the commercial draw. I transferred the $80,000 directly to my joint checking account with Vanessa. It took 10 minutes. It is not a big deal. Alita, just pick up the phone, call the bank manager, and fix it." There it was, the complete, uncoerced confession. She had provided the method, the amount, and the destination of the stolen funds. I tapped the face of my smartwatch, stopping the recording application. The file saved instantly to my encrypted cloud server. I looked at the woman who had spent my entire life manipulating my reality, tearing down my confidence and demanding my obedience. "I am not calling the bank," I told her. "I am not paying the venue, and I am certainly not taking a dilapidated cabin in exchange for covering up a felony." Patricia froze. Her fake sweet smile vanished. "What did you say?" "You committed wire fraud," I stated plainly. "You stole corporate funds. Financial crimes are not family misunderstandings. You and Vanessa are going to have to face the consequences of your own actions." The transformation was instantaneous. The tears dried up. Her face flushed a dark, angry crimson. She snatched the manila envelope off the desk, gripping the paper so tightly her knuckles turned white. "You ungrateful wretch," she hissed. Her voice vibrated with pure malice. "We gave you everything. We tried to include you in this family. You have always been jealous of your sister. You could never stand to see her happy. You always want to ruin everything for her." I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice to match hers. I simply watched her unravel. "You built her happiness with stolen money," I reminded her. Patricia marched toward the door, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. She turned the heavy metal handle, then looked back at me over her shoulder. Her eyes were cold and venomous. "If you pursue this, I will destroy you," she promised. "I will call every relative, every family friend, and every business contact you have in this city. I will tell them you lost your mind at the reception. I will tell them you tried to ruin your sister's wedding because you are a bitter, lonely woman who cannot handle someone else finding love. By the time I am done with you, your reputation will be in ashes. No one will ever believe a single word you say." She slammed the door behind her. The thick glass vibrated in its frame. I stood in the quiet of my office, listening to the muffled sound of her shouting at my assistant as she stormed toward the elevators. Patricia thought she had won the interaction. She thought her threats of social ruin would paralyze me. She was operating on a decades-old playbook, assuming gossip and slander were the most powerful weapons in the world. She walked out of my office, unaware that she had just handed me a recorded, legally admissible confession. I walked back around to my desk and opened my laptop. I verified that the audio file had uploaded correctly. My mother's voice filled the room through my headphones, crisp and clear, admitting to the exact amount and the method of the theft. It was the golden ticket. But a confession alone was only one piece of the puzzle. Patricia and Vanessa were already preparing a smear campaign. They were going to use the staged video of me serving champagne to discredit my character. They would upload snippets of me looking like a subservient waitstaff member, hoping the visual humiliation would outshine any claims of corporate theft. I needed to beat them to the punch. I needed the raw, unedited footage from the videographer. I needed the venue security tapes. I needed to prove they had orchestrated the humiliation to cover their tracks. I picked up my desk phone and dialed my digital investigator. My mother had just given me the motive. Now I needed the mechanics. I needed to see exactly what Vanessa had instructed the camera crew to do before I walked into that ballroom. The digital footprint was out there sitting on a venue server or a memory card waiting to be claimed. I was going to collect every single frame. My family wanted to play a game of reputations. They were about to learn that facts do not care about gossip and data never lies. The digital investigator arrived at my corporate suite before the morning rush hour ended. Thomas carried a silver locked briefcase. He did not offer small talk. I hired him because he treated data like a surgeon treats an operating table, excising the facts and discarding the noise. My civil attorney had secured a rapid subpoena for the venue security servers and the wedding videographer's raw memory cards, threatening immediate injunctions if a single megabyte disappeared. The event manager, remembering my warning from Saturday night, had handed everything over without a fight. Thomas placed a secure hard drive on my mahogany desk and connected it to a standalone monitor. He typed in a decryption sequence. He looked at me, his face expressionless. "They left a trail a mile wide," Thomas stated. "Your mother used the same password for her banking portal that she used for her synchronized family cloud account." Patricia always considered herself untouchable. She worked as a commercial loan officer decades ago and believed her financial knowledge made her superior to modern security protocols. She never updated her methods. She reused passwords. She linked her phone, her tablet, and her home computer to one vulnerable digital ecosystem. She thought she was building a fortress, but she had left the front gate wide open. Thomas clicked a folder labeled Communications. He brought up a series of recovered text messages between Vanessa and the head of the catering company. The timestamps showed the exchange occurring 3 days before the reception. I read the screen. Vanessa sent clear, explicit instructions. She demanded the catering manager keep 3 servers hidden inside the kitchen during the primary champagne toast. The manager texted back warning that holding staff back would cause a delay in service for the head table. Vanessa replied with a single sentence, "That is exactly what I want." The staffing shortage was not an accident. The missing waiters were not delayed by traffic. Vanessa engineered the crisis. She created the void so she could force me to fill it. We moved to the next folder. Thomas opened the raw, unedited footage recovered directly from the wedding videographer's primary camera. The videographer had surrendered the uncompressed files to comply with the subpoena, likely terrified of being dragged into a corporate fraud lawsuit. The video loaded. It was not the polished, color-corrected version Vanessa intended to post online. It was the raw feed, complete with the chaotic background noise of the staging area. Thomas explained that the videographer wore a synchronized lavalier microphone around his neck to capture ambient audio while adjusting his lenses. He left the microphone hot while standing outside the bridal suite door 20 minutes before the reception began. The camera lens pointed at the floor, showing the carpeted hallway, but the audio was crystal clear. My sister's voice came through the speakers. She sounded sharp-focused and entirely devoid of wedding day jitters. "Make sure the lighting is right near the catering doors," Vanessa instructed. "Someone inside the room. I want her trapped in the frame. She will try to walk away." My mother responded next. Patricia's voice held that familiar, commanding tone she used whenever she manipulated our relatives. "I will block the exit route. I will use the trust fund threat. That always freezes her." Then came the sentence that changed the entire trajectory of my investigation. Vanessa sighed, the rustling of her heavy silk gown loud against the microphone. "Just get the camera on her when she breaks," Vanessa said. "The producers need to see the tension. If she just stands there and looks bored, we lose the storyline." The recording clicked off as the videographer finally turned off his secondary audio feed. I sat perfectly still in my leather chair. The cold air from the office vents washed over my skin. The word hung in the quiet room, echoing in my mind. Producers. The $80,000 stolen from my corporate accounts made sense now. Vanessa did not just want a luxurious party to impress her new husband. She was staging a production. She hired the extra cameras. She forced me into the canvas apron. She needed me to break down, cry, and look unstable because she was manufacturing a storyline for a television pitch. She needed tension. She needed a villain. Vanessa had spent her entire life seeking an audience. When we were teenagers, she faked injuries at my track meets to draw the attention back to herself. If I received an academic award, she orchestrated a dramatic breakup with a boyfriend on the same night. She treated every room like a stage, and she treated our family like unpaid cast members. Now she had found a way to monetize that toxicity. She was using stolen corporate funds to finance a pilot episode for her own reality project. I looked at the text messages on the monitor. I looked at the audio transcript Thomas had generated. My mother and sister had colluded to ruin my reputation, steal my assets, and sell my humiliation to a production company. There was no sadness left in my chest. The betrayal was so profound, so calculated, that it burned away any lingering grief. I was not dealing with a difficult family. I was dealing with a criminal enterprise. Thomas closed the media player. He handed me a bound physical copy of the digital forensics report. Every IP address, every deleted text, every raw audio file was logged, authenticated, and ready for court. "You have everything you need to file criminal charges," Thomas noted, packing his secure drives back into his silver briefcase. "The district attorney will love this. It is a textbook wire fraud and conspiracy case." I placed my hand on the thick binder. The paper felt heavy, grounded, and real. The facts were undeniable. Patricia's recorded confession from my office established the theft. The text messages proved the premeditation. The raw audio revealed the motive. But handing this to the police right now would only stop the crime. It would not dismantle the illusion Vanessa had built. If she went to jail today, she would spin a story about being a misunderstood victim of a wealthy, vindictive corporate sister. She would find a way to manipulate the narrative from a courtroom defense table. I could not just cut off the branches. I had to rip the entire root system out of the ground. I needed to find out exactly who Vanessa was selling this footage to. If producers were involved, there was a paper trail. There were contracts. There were pitch documents detailing exactly how she intended to use me, and more importantly, how she intended to use Derek's 14-year-old daughter, Sophia. I opened my laptop and connected it to my private network. I instructed Thomas to leave the cloned copy of Patricia's synchronized cloud drive on my server. I had the keys to my mother's digital vault, and I was going to read every single document she tried to hide. I began sorting through the recovered files, my eyes scanning the file names. I ignored the folders filled with wedding inspiration boards and catering menus. I scrolled past the lists of floral arrangements. I was looking for something specific. I was looking for the business plan. My cursor stopped over a compressed folder labeled Southern Belles Project. The creation date was 6 months ago, long before Derek ever proposed. Vanessa had been planning this operation for half a year. I double-clicked the folder. A high-resolution PDF file appeared on my screen. The cover page loaded, displaying a stylized photograph of my sister standing in front of the Atlanta skyline. The title read, Series Pitch Deck. I clicked to the next page. I was about to see exactly how much my sister thought my life was worth. The PDF file opened on my screen. The glowing white background illuminated my dark office. I leaned closer, reading the stylized text plastered across the cover page. The title sat bold and heavy above a glossy, edited photograph of my sister. Southern Belles and Blended Families. In the bottom right corner of the document, the logo for a minor reality television network sat nestled next to the insignia of an independent production company. This was not a vague dream or a casual conversation. This was a professional 40-page pitch deck. Vanessa had hired a graphic designer. She had drafted a narrative arc. She had mapped out an entire season of television based on the people she planned to manipulate. I scrolled to the second page. A cast of characters appeared. Vanessa listed herself first. The description painted her as a vibrant, generous newlywed, trying to bring her fractured family together while navigating her new role as a stepmother. I clicked to the next page. My own face stared back at me. It was a candid photograph taken at a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. I remembered the exact moment. I had just finished a 14-hour negotiation for a warehouse acquisition. I looked exhausted. My hair was pulled back into a severe knot, and I was staring blankly at my phone. Vanessa had stolen the image from a shared photo album and repurposed it. Below the photograph, she had typed a character summary. Alita Miller, the older sister. Unmarried, bitter, and isolated. She hides behind a mid-level corporate job because she cannot maintain personal relationships. Deeply jealous of Vanessa's youth, beauty, and successful romance, Alita resists the blended family dynamic. Her unpredictable temper creates constant friction. I traced the words with my eyes. My sister had taken my success and spun it into a pathetic failure. She did not know I owned Apex Logistics, so she framed my long hours as a sad coping mechanism. She needed a villain for her show. Every reality television program relies on conflict. Vanessa decided I would play the role of the unstable antagonist. She needed the producers to see that tension on camera. That was why she forced the catering apron into my hands. She wanted to record me snapping under pressure. The $80,000 stolen from my company paid for the lighting, the venue, and the stage where she intended to break me. The betrayal felt cold and calculated. But as I scrolled deeper into the document, the sibling rivalry faded into something much darker. Page 14 introduced the primary storyline. The header read, "The Blended Family Challenge." Below the header sat a photograph of Derek's 14-year-old daughter. Sophia was looking away from the camera, her shoulders hunched. The text beneath her picture detailed her private medical history. Vanessa listed Sophia's clinical diagnosis of severe social anxiety. She outlined the teenager's panic attacks, framing them as dramatic hurdles the new stepmother had to overcome. The pitch promised raw, unfiltered access to Sophia's emotional breakdowns. Vanessa explicitly stated that the cameras would capture the struggles of parenting a troubled teen. She branded herself as the resilient savior holding the family together. My stomach turned. My sister was offering a minor child's mental health as a plot device for cheap entertainment. I checked the legal appendices at the back of the file. Reality television networks require signed releases before they review character pitches involving minors. I found the scanned signature page. Derek had never signed the document. Patricia had forged Derek's authorization just as she had forged my electronic signature on the bank loan. My mother and sister had conspired to sell a child's trauma without her father ever knowing. The final section of the pitch deck laid out the financial mechanics. The network required a proof of concept. They wanted a pilot episode before they committed to a full season. Vanessa had to fund the pilot herself to prove she could deliver high-quality drama. The math clicked into place. The $80,000, the catering, the videographer with the hot microphone, the wedding was the pilot episode. If the network executives liked the footage of my humiliation and Sophia's anxiety, they promised a lucrative contract. The final page of the deck detailed the terms: a $150,000 advance upon signing, with guaranteed episodic fees for a 12-episode season. Vanessa risked federal wire fraud to secure a television contract. She sold her own family to buy fame. For a fraction of a second, an old instinct flared in my chest. I wanted to take these files and post them on every social media platform. I wanted to expose her to her friends, her wedding guests, and her followers. I wanted to watch her public image burn in real time. I took a breath and pushed the instinct down. Social media thrives on chaos. If I posted the pitch deck online, Vanessa would immediately turn on her camera. She would cry. She would claim I hacked her computer and fabricated the documents because I was jealous of her wedding. The public arena was her territory. She knew how to manipulate a digital crowd. I refused to fight in the mud. I operated in boardrooms. I dealt with contracts liabilities and corporate risk. I was going to destroy her using the exact system she tried to infiltrate. I opened a new secure workspace on my laptop. I extracted the contact sheet from the final page of Vanessa's pitch deck. She had listed the email addresses and phone numbers of the network executives who received the submission. She included the head of development for the independent production company. Most importantly, she listed the network's legal compliance officer. Network executives love drama on screen. Network lawyers despise drama in their legal department. Corporate attorneys do not care about family gossip. They care about financial exposure. I began drafting a formal legal notice. I kept the language sterile, precise, and devoid of any emotion. I attached the IP logs proving the $80,000 wire fraud. I attached the forged banking signatures. I included the audio recording of Patricia admitting to the theft inside my office. I established a direct financial link between the stolen corporate funds and the production of their pilot episode. Then I built the second section of the compliance package. I attached the forged parental consent forms regarding Sophia. I cited specific federal privacy statutes protecting a minor's medical history. I noted that Derek, the sole legal guardian, had never authorized the commercialization of his daughter's image or mental health records. I assembled the evidence into a single, undeniable digital package. If the network moved forward with Vanessa's contract, they would be funding a project built on felony wire fraud and the illegal exploitation of a minor. They would be opening themselves up to catastrophic civil litigation. I picked up my phone and dialed David. My corporate attorney answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. "Clear your schedule for tomorrow," I instructed him. "We are not calling the district attorney yet. We are calling a television network." I explained the pitch deck. I outlined the forged consent forms. David grasped the strategy immediately. A criminal investigation could take months of bureaucratic delays. A corporate compliance department could sever Vanessa's contract in a matter of hours to protect their own assets. "I need you to draft a cease and desist order, demanding the immediate destruction of all footage containing my image or Sophia's image," I told him. "Prepare to file an injunction against the production company for receiving stolen funds." "Consider it done," David replied. "The network lawyers will bury this project the second they see the liability." I ended the call. Next, I typed a secure message to Derek. I told him to meet me at my office first thing in the morning. He needed to be present. As Sophia's father, his explicit revocation of consent was the final weapon required to dismantle the television deal. The trap was fully loaded. Vanessa thought she was the director of this story. She thought she could script my failure and sell it for a profit. She had no idea that I held the remote control. Tomorrow she was going to learn what happens when you try to sell a stolen product to a buyer who just realized the merchandise is toxic. The law firm representing the reality television network occupied the top 2 floors of a sleek glass tower in Buckhead. I walked into the lobby at exactly 9 on Tuesday morning. I wore a tailored charcoal suit and carried nothing. David walked beside me, gripping a thick leather briefcase. Derek flanked my right side. He looked exhausted, having spent the previous evening securing the emergency ex-parte custody order, but his jaw was set. He was no longer the confused groom from Saturday night. He was a father protecting his child. A receptionist escorted us into a sprawling conference room. The mahogany table stretched 20 feet across the room, gleaming under recessed lighting. The air conditioning hummed quietly. A silver pitcher of ice water sat untouched in the center of the table. The network's lead regional counsel, a man named Sterling, stood to greet us. He wore an expensive navy suit and a polite, practiced smile. 2 other network executives joined the meeting via a large video monitor mounted on the far wall. They were dialing in from Los Angeles. The head of development looked annoyed by the early morning interruption. "Please take a seat," Sterling offered, gesturing to the heavy leather chairs. "Vanessa informed us that we might hear from you, Miss Miller. She mentioned you were upset about a minor altercation at the wedding reception. We understand family dynamics can be complicated." He was trying to shrink the problem. He wanted to frame my presence as a petty sibling dispute over spilled champagne. He assumed I was an angry, unmarried sister trying to disrupt a television production out of spite. Vanessa had prepared her audience well. I did not sit down immediately. I leaned forward and placed both hands flat on the cool mahogany wood. "We are not here to discuss family dynamics," I told him. My voice carried no emotion. It was flat, clinical, and precise. "We are here to discuss corporate liability." I took my seat. David opened his briefcase and pulled out 3 identical black binders. He slid one across the table to Sterling. He placed the others near the video monitor camera so the executives in Los Angeles could see the physical weight of the evidence. "Open the binder to page 1, David instructed. Sterling lost his polite smile. He flipped the heavy cover open. That is a digital trace log from a commercial banking server, I explained, watching his eyes scan the page. The IP address originates from my mother's residence in Alpharetta. The electronic signature on the following page is a forgery. My mother and my sister illegally accessed my dormant personal banking credentials to open a backdoor line of credit attached to the collateral holdings of my logistics firm. They stole $80,000 to fund the venue and catering for the wedding reception. The head of development on the video monitor leaned closer to his camera. What does this have to do with the network? Your network provided a development advance to my sister to shoot a pilot episode for a proposed reality series, I answered. Vanessa needed to prove she could deliver high-stakes drama. The wedding reception you planned to feature in your pilot was financed entirely by felony wire fraud. Sterling picked up his pen. His fingers gripped the plastic tight enough to turn his knuckles white. He turned to the next section of the binder. I continued outlining the facts. When I arrived at the reception, Vanessa manufactured a confrontation by forcing me to wear a catering apron. She instructed your contracted camera crew to film me. Page 4 contains the raw audio transcript from your videographer's microphone. You can read the exact quote where my sister tells the crew to keep the camera on me because the producers need to see the tension. The room grew very quiet. The sound of the ice shifting in the water pitcher seemed loud. You were planning to broadcast a manufactured assault funded by stolen corporate assets, I told the executives on the screen. If you air that footage, or if you continue funding this project, my company will file a civil suit against this network for receiving stolen funds and profiting from a criminal enterprise. Sterling stared at the transcript. The legal exposure was massive, but he was a corporate lawyer. He tried to find a loophole. Miss Miller, these are serious allegations, Sterling murmured. But the network did not execute the wire fraud. We could simply edit around the wedding reception. The core of Vanessa's show focuses on her role as a stepmother to a troubled teen. We can pivot the storyline. I leaned back in my chair. I waited for a beat, letting him commit to his alternative plan before I destroyed it. I turned my head and looked at Derek. Derek sat forward. He did not look intimidated by the lawyers or the executives. He opened his own slim folder and pulled out a stack of legal documents. He slid them across the table towards Sterling. I am Derek, he introduced himself, his voice steady and hard. I am the groom from that wedding. I am also the sole legal guardian of Sophia, the 14-year-old girl your network intends to feature in this program. Sterling looked down at the documents. That is my driver's license, Sophia's birth certificate, and the emergency ex parte custody order a Fulton County judge signed yesterday afternoon, Derek explained. The order revokes all access my wife has to my daughter due to emotional abuse and unauthorized commercial exploitation. The compliance officer on the video monitor unmuted her microphone. The sharp click echoed in the room. What exploitation? Vanessa provided us with signed parental consent forms for the minor. They are forged, Derek stated bluntly. I never signed a media release. I never gave your production company permission to monetize my daughter's private medical history. Vanessa filmed my child suffering a severe panic attack while hiding the camera. She used my daughter's clinical anxiety diagnosis to sell a pitch deck to your development team. Sterling dropped his pen. It bounced once on the mahogany table. If your network uses a single frame of footage containing my daughter Derek, continued leaning closer to the attorney, I will sue this production company for violating a minor's medical privacy rights. I will name every executive who approved the broadcast. I will take this to the press, and I will make sure every sponsor attached to your network knows you are profiting off the illegal exploitation of a child. The silence that followed was absolute. Network lawyers thrive on risk calculation. They calculate the cost of a lawsuit against the potential advertising revenue of a hit television show. But there is no acceptable risk calculation for wire fraud combined with the exploitation of a minor without parental consent. The liability was catastrophic. Vanessa was no longer a rising reality star. She was a legal landmine waiting to detonate under their entire regional division. David pulled a final document from his briefcase. He slid it across the table. It was a formal notarized cease and desist order. You have 24 hours to confirm the destruction of all raw and edited footage containing my client's likeness, David instructed. You will also confirm the immediate termination of the development contract with Vanessa. If we do not receive written confirmation by tomorrow morning, we file the injunctions. Sterling did not argue. He did not offer a counterproposal. He looked at the executives on the screen. The head of development rubbed his forehead, his face pale. The compliance officer simply nodded once. "We understand your position," Sterling said, his voice clipped and hollow. "The network takes allegations of fraud and unauthorized minor participation very seriously. We will halt all production immediately. You will have your confirmation before the end of the business day." They folded. Just like that, the entire illusion my sister had spent 6 months building collapsed in a matter of 20 minutes. We stood up from the table. We did not shake hands. We walked out of the conference room and rode the silent elevator down to the lobby. When we pushed through the revolving glass doors onto the bright Atlanta street, Derek let out a long, ragged breath. He looked up at the sky, his shoulders dropping 2 inches as the tension left his body. He had protected his daughter. He had severed the chain Vanessa tried to wrap around his family. "Thank you, Derek," said quietly, turning to look at me. "I do not know how I would have stopped her without those documents." "You fought for your child," I replied. "You did exactly what a father is supposed to do." David checked his phone as we walked toward the parking garage. "The network is going to call her within the hour," he noted. "They are going to trigger the morality clause in her contract." I nodded, feeling the warm Georgia sun on my face. Vanessa had banked her entire future on that television deal. She had spent the last 3 months living like a reality star, signing leases, booking luxury vacations, and buying designer clothes using the anticipated network money. The network was not just going to cancel her show. They were going to demand their development advance back. The financial clawback was about to begin, and Vanessa had no corporate accounts left to steal from. Her world was about to shrink to the size of her mounting debts. The trap had sprung, and she was entirely alone inside it. The delivery occurred on a humid Wednesday afternoon. A uniformed courier arrived at the luxury high-rise building where my sibling rented a penthouse suite just 2 months prior. Vanessa signed the electronic pad, likely expecting another expensive wedding present from a wealthy relative. Instead, she tore open a thick manila envelope containing a formal termination notice from the broadcast executives. The legal document cited a breach of morality clauses, alongside blatant, fraudulent misrepresentation. The corporate lawyers did not mince words. They severed the television development contract effective immediately. The studio did not stop at cancellation. The legal department demanded swift repayment of a $25,000 development advance. Vanessa received those funds 3 weeks earlier to prepare for filming. She squandered every single cent, securing a designer bridal gown, booking first-class tickets for a honeymoon in Bora Bora, and purchasing imported furniture for an apartment she could no longer afford. Her fragile financial structure collapsed the second she read the final paragraph. She possessed zero liquid capital to refund the network. This studio cancellation triggered a devastating chain reaction. The Buckhead Event Center manager received an automated notification indicating the remaining $80,000 balance declined. My corporate hold prevented the forged credit line from clearing the final transaction. The manager immediately alerted his preferred partners. The luxury catering company realized their outstanding invoice remained unpaid. The high-end floral boutique discovered their substantial deposit check bounced. By Thursday morning, aggressive process servers began congregating in the marble lobby of Vanessa's building. Civil suits multiply rapidly in Fulton County when elite vendors feel cheated. The catering director filed a claim for theft of services. The florist submitted a lawsuit for breach of contract. My sibling ignored the relentless knocking at her front door. She hid inside a lavishly decorated living room surrounded by unpaid velvet sofas and unreturned crystal stemware, watching her bank accounts freeze one by one. When lucrative entertainment prospects vanish, individuals like my sister revert to their oldest survival tactic. They seek an audience. Vanessa could not fix the wire fraud. She could not pay the angry vendors. Therefore, she decided to manipulate public opinion. She needed society to view her as a victim so some sympathetic stranger might offer financial rescue. She pulled her professional ring light out of the closet, set up her smartphone on a tripod, and pressed record. My phone buzzed while I reviewed freight manifests inside my Midtown office. An automated alert notified me that Vanessa published a new broadcast across 3 different digital platforms. I tapped the screen to observe her strategy. My sibling stared into the lens wearing an oversized faded sweater, her makeup carefully applied to look exhausted and heartbroken. She produced tears on cue, wiping her cheeks, telling her followers that a jealous older relative ruined a dream wedding out of pure spite. She claimed I used corporate wealth to bully her into bankruptcy. Vanessa begged her viewers for help. She urged them to share the recording to expose my alleged cruelty. She spun a frantic story portraying herself as a terrified new bride, hiding from a vindictive family member. For 20 minutes, the view count climbed exponentially. Comments poured in from outraged strangers, offering sympathy, condemning my actions, and promising to boycott my logistics firm. She thought she discovered a loophole. She assumed public pressure would force me to withdraw the corporate theft investigation. She forgot one crucial detail. I anticipated this exact maneuver. During my meeting with the digital investigator, I secured the exclusive copyright to the raw wedding footage. I also drafted precise cease and desist orders, preventing the unauthorized distribution of my likeness, my name, or any content depicting my image. My corporate legal team submitted preemptive ownership documents to every major social media platform earlier that week. I did not reply to her tearful broadcast. I did not publish a counter-statement defending my character. Engaging in a public shouting match only feeds the algorithm and validates the drama. I simply forwarded the specific URL link to David, my corporate attorney. He initiated the automated copyright strike protocols we established days ago. We flagged her content for intellectual property violations and unauthorized commercial monetization of my personal likeness. Platform algorithms operate without empathy. They do not care about manufactured tears or loyal followers. They care about avoiding legal liability. Within 45 minutes of her initial upload, the screen went black. A generic gray error message replaced her crying face, citing a copyright takedown request. The recording vanished from the internet. Vanessa panicked. She tried uploading a shorter clip to a different application. That specific platform deleted her account entirely for repeat intellectual property offenses. She attempted to write a lengthy text post on another site. David issued a digital gag order violation notice to the hosting provider, citing the pending criminal wire fraud investigation and the unauthorized dissemination of protected evidence. The post disappeared before it gained 100 views. I sat in my quiet executive suite watching the digital erasure unfold. It felt clinical. There was no joy in seeing my siblings self-destruct, only a profound sense of mechanical accountability. For her entire life, my sister used her voice to control reality. She cried to our mother to get her way. She whispered lies to Derek to isolate him. She spoke into a camera to build a fake career. Now every avenue she utilized to broadcast her illusions slammed shut. The mechanics of digital media, the very tools she planned to employ to destroy my reputation, turned against her. Without an audience, Vanessa held no power. The strangers online could not save her from the process servers waiting in the lobby. The digital tears meant nothing to the broadcast executives demanding their $25,000 back. She sat alone in her expensive apartment, holding a smartphone that no longer amplified her voice. She was silenced by her own ambition, trapped inside a cage built entirely from her own choices. Derek told me exactly what happened when he unlocked the door to the luxury high-rise apartment that Thursday evening. The space was mostly empty. Vanessa had spent the initial reality television advance on the wedding and honeymoon planning to furnish the penthouse, using the promised episodic fees. Now only a rented velvet sofa and a few scattered moving boxes sat on the bare hardwood floors. The echo in the room was deafening. Vanessa sat on the floor, scrolling frantically through her dead social media profiles. When she heard the deadbolt click, she scrambled to her feet. She expected a savior. She thought her husband was coming home to comfort her after my legal attacks. She rushed toward the entryway, already arranging her face into a mask of tragic victimhood. Derek stopped her before she could wrap her arms around his neck. He stepped back, keeping a physical distance that felt colder than any shouted insult. He did not yell. He did not throw his keys or demand answers. He carried a leather briefcase and possessed the surgical focus of a man who had spent the last 48 hours speaking with ruthless family law attorneys. He walked past her and dropped a thick stack of legal documents onto the marble kitchen island. The heavy thud echoed against the bare walls. "Sign these," Derek instructed. His tone lacked any trace of the affection he held for her just 5 days ago. Vanessa stared at the papers. She reached out with trembling fingers, expecting divorce forms. What she saw was far worse. The The top page clearly stated the petition was for an annulment based on fraudulent inducement. The state of Georgia allows an annulment if a marriage is built on a fundamental, intentional lie. Derek was not just ending their relationship, he was legally erasing it. Derek was a man who clawed his way up from a working-class background. He spent his early 20s fighting a grueling custody battle to secure a stable life for his daughter. He valued honesty and protection above everything else. He thought he found a partner who shared those values. Instead, he found a predator. Beneath the annulment paperwork sat a second document with a stark red court seal. It was an emergency ex parte restraining order. "What is this?" Vanessa whispered. Her voice shook, but Derek saw right through the performance. "That is a judge ordering you to stay 500 feet away from my child," Derek answered. He kept his hands in his pockets, refusing to offer her a single inch of physical comfort. Vanessa immediately deployed her standard defense mechanism. She began to cry. Large, perfect tears rolled down her cheeks. She dropped to her knees, clinging to the edge of the kitchen island. She claimed she did not understand what was happening. She begged him to listen to her side of the story, insisting that I was trying to ruin their lives out of pure jealousy. Derek did not flinch. He did not bend down to help her up. He looked at the woman crying on the floor and felt nothing but profound disgust. "I saw the pitch deck, Vanessa," he stated. The quiet certainty in his voice stopped her tears instantly. "I know about the television show. I know about the $80,000 you and your mother stole from my employer to fund our wedding reception." Vanessa froze. Her chest stopped heaving. The realization that her husband knew the entire truth paralyzed her. "But that is not why I am erasing this marriage," Derek continued. "I am erasing this marriage because I saw the video you took of Sophia. I watched you force my daughter to suffer through a panic attack so you could use her medical history to secure a broadcasting contract. You monetized a 14-year-old girl's trauma to buy yourself a designer wedding dress." Vanessa scrambled to her feet. She abandoned the tears and switched to desperate justification. She reached out, trying to grab his hand. "Derek, I did it for us," she pleaded. "I did it for our future. I was trying to build a brand that could support this family. Sophia needs a strong female role model. I was showing the world how we overcome obstacles together. We could have been wealthy. We could have had everything." "You sold my child," Derek corrected her, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You stole from my company. You lied about your finances, your family, and your character. There is no future. There is no us." He turned his back on her and walked down the hallway toward the master bedroom. He did not pack casually. He moved with clinical efficiency. He retrieved his suits, his shoes, and his personal documents, tossing them into 2 large suitcases. He did not touch a single item Vanessa had purchased. He left the expensive watches and the designer cufflinks on the dresser. He wanted nothing that was tainted by her stolen money. Sophia stood waiting in the guest bedroom. She already had her backpack zipped and her coat on. She did not cry. The teenager looked relieved. The heavy, suffocating pressure of performing for a camera had finally lifted off her shoulders. Derek took his daughter's hand, grabbed his luggage, and walked back into the main living area. Vanessa stood near the door, blocking their exit. She was frantic now. If Derek left, her entire blended family narrative evaporated. She needed that storyline to remain relevant. She needed him to validate her existence. "You cannot just abandon me," Vanessa screamed, her voice cracking. "I have process servers waiting in the lobby. The venue is suing me. The network wants their advance back. I have no money left. You are my husband. You have to help me fix this." Derek looked at her without a shred of empathy. "I officially revoke all consent for you to use my name, my image, or my daughter's likeness in any capacity," he stated formally. "If you mention us on any digital platform, my lawyers will file a civil lawsuit for defamation and unauthorized commercial exploitation. Sign the annulment papers. The courier will pick them up tomorrow morning." He stepped around her, pulling Sophia gently by the arm. He opened the front door, walked out into the carpeted hallway, and let the heavy door swing shut behind him. The locking mechanism clicked into place with a sharp, final echo. Vanessa was completely alone. The silence in the unfurnished apartment was suffocating. She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the sprawling Atlanta skyline. She had dreamed of ruling this city from a penthouse suite. Now she was a prisoner inside it. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen island. It was an automated alert from her bank. Another account had been frozen due to suspicious activity. The walls were closing in rapidly. She had no job, she had no reality television contract, she had no husband to shield her from the financial fallout. The vendors were demanding payment, and the corporate wire fraud investigation loomed over her head like an anvil. Panic, pure and unadulterated, finally pierced through her delusion. She needed a lifeline. She needed someone with access to capital, someone who shared the blame for the stolen $80,000. She picked up her phone and dialed the only person left in her fractured universe. She called our mother. Vanessa expected Patricia to wire her emergency funds. She expected her mother to hire a defense attorney and concoct a brilliant legal strategy to save them both. She did not realize that the district attorney was already closing the net. She did not understand that when the pressure becomes unbearable, toxic alliances shatter. Vanessa was looking for a savior, completely unaware that her mother was currently sitting in a downtown office preparing to trade her favorite daughter for a plea deal. Vanessa gripped her smartphone, listening to the automated voicemail greeting for the fourth consecutive time. She stood in the center of her unfurnished penthouse, surrounded by unpaid vendor invoices and the silence of an abandoned marriage. She dialed our mother again. She needed a rescue. She expected Patricia to wire emergency funds, hire a ruthless defense team, and weave a brilliant narrative to fix the disaster. Vanessa was looking for a savior, completely unaware that her mother was already severing their ties. Patricia was not sitting at home waiting to answer her phone. She was sitting in a high-backed leather chair inside a polished law office in downtown Atlanta. David walked into my executive suite on Friday morning, holding a fresh stack of legal filings. The district attorney moved faster than either of us anticipated. The formal compliance package I submitted earlier that week triggered an immediate criminal inquiry. Financial crimes involving clear digital evidence rarely face bureaucratic delays. The authorities secured a search warrant and paid a visit to Patricia's home in Alpharetta at dawn. They confiscated her desktop computer, her tablet, and her primary smartphone. My mother called the most expensive defense attorney she could find, David explained, taking a seat across from my desk. He reviewed the preliminary discovery file this morning. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the cool glass of my desk. What did her lawyer tell her? He told her the truth, David replied, a grim satisfaction in his voice. He told her she was looking at felony wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy charges. He played the audio recording you captured in this very office. He showed her the IP tracing logs, placing the fraudulent credit application directly inside her living room. Patricia always believed her wealth and her social standing made her untouchable. She spent decades manipulating relatives, treating the truth like clay she could mold to fit her preferences. She assumed the legal system operated the same way. Her high-priced defense attorney had to shatter that delusion. He did not offer her comforting lies. He laid out the state's sentencing guidelines. Patricia was in her early 60s. She spent her days attending charity luncheons, curating her public image, and dictating family politics. The prospect of spending 5 to 10 years in a state penitentiary terrified her. Prison meant a loss of control, a loss of comfort, and a total destruction of her carefully manicured reputation. When faced with the stark reality of a concrete cell, her survival instinct overrode her maternal loyalty in a heartbeat. She asked her lawyer how to avoid jail time. David continued, flipping open his legal pad. Her attorney advised her that the district attorney wanted a solid, undeniable conviction. Patricia executed the unauthorized bank transfer, but Vanessa was the primary beneficiary of the stolen capital. Vanessa used the funds to secure a television pilot. The lawyer told Patricia that if she could prove her daughter orchestrated the scheme, the prosecutor might offer probation in exchange for testimony. My mother did not hesitate. She did not agonize over sacrificing her favorite child. The toxic alliance they shared was never built on genuine affection. It was a partnership of mutual convenience, fueled by their shared desire to control the people around them. The second that partnership became a legal liability, Patricia cut the cord. Yesterday afternoon, Patricia sat down in a sterile room at the district attorney office, David said. She requested a proffer meeting. She offered to turn state evidence against Vanessa. I sat back in my chair, absorbing the cold, transactional nature of the betrayal. What did she give them? Everything, David answered simply. Patricia handed the investigators a printed trove of text messages and emails she had secretly archived. For years, she taught Vanessa how to manipulate people, but she also kept receipts, just in case her daughter ever turned against her. The documents were damning. Patricia provided email threads where Vanessa explicitly demanded $80,000 to secure the television contract. She surrendered text messages where Vanessa provided the direct routing numbers for the luxury venue and the catering service. Patricia painted herself as a confused, aging mother, coerced by a demanding, ambitious bride. She claimed Vanessa pressured her relentlessly, leveraging her desire for family harmony to force her into making a terrible financial mistake. It was a masterful performance, blending partial truths with calculated victimhood. She traded her loyalty for a plea deal to keep herself out of a prison uniform. While Patricia signed her proffer agreement, Vanessa finally received a phone call. It was not her mother offering a financial lifeline. It was a financial crimes detective requesting her presence at the local precinct to discuss the disputed catering payments. Vanessa arrived with a cheap, inexperienced lawyer she hired on a credit card. She planned to deploy her usual strategy. She planned to cry-play the victim and blame the entire situation on a jealous older sister who froze the family accounts out of spite. The detective did not argue with her. He did not raise his voice or show any emotion when she started producing artificial tears. He simply reached into his file and slid a thick transcript across the metal table. Vanessa read the header on the document. It was a sworn, signed affidavit from Patricia. According to the police report David obtained, Vanessa stopped crying the moment she recognized her mother's signature. She read the pages detailing the exact timeline of the fraud. She read the paragraphs where Patricia shifted every ounce of legal and moral blame onto her shoulders. She saw copies of her own text messages attached as exhibits, provided directly by the woman she trusted most. Vanessa realized her mother had sold her out to save her own skin. The psychological impact struck harder than the legal jeopardy. Vanessa spent her entire life believing she was the golden child. She thought she and Patricia were an unbreakable team united against me and anyone else who dared to set a boundary. She realized in that cold interrogation room that their bond was an illusion. Patricia did not love her. Patricia used her as an extension of her own ego. When the ego was threatened, the daughter became expendable. The relationship between my mother and my sister shattered permanently in that precinct. Vanessa refused to answer any more questions. She invoked her right to remain silent, but the damage was already done. The evidence Patricia provided was overwhelming, sealing the case against both of them. I looked out the window of my office, watching the Atlanta traffic flow along the busy streets below. The toxic family dynamic was eating itself alive. For years, they relied on deceit, gossip, and financial control to keep our relatives in line. They thought they were building an empire. Instead, they built a house of cards over a fault line. The moment they faced genuine legal consequences, the structure collapsed, and they tore each other apart, trying to escape the rubble. The authorities formally charged Vanessa with felony wire fraud conspiracy and unauthorized use of a computer network later that evening. She was processed, fingerprinted, and released on bond. She returned to her empty, unfurnished apartment. She had no television contract. She had no husband. She had no mother to call for comfort. She was isolated, facing serious criminal penalties, and buried under a mountain of civil debt from the unpaid wedding vendors. David closed his legal pad and packed it into his briefcase. The district attorney is moving to schedule the arraignment and plea hearings, he noted. They have all the evidence they need. This will not go to trial. They are going to offer Vanessa a deal based on Patricia's testimony. I nodded, feeling a profound sense of closure settling over me. The drama, the shouting, the public smear campaigns, all of it was over. There was nothing left for them to spin. We were moving out of the arena of family gossip and entering the sterile, unforgiving machinery of the justice system. The final outcome would not be determined by who could cry the hardest on camera. It would be determined by a judge sitting behind a wooden bench, reading the undeniable facts into the public record. The heavy oak doors of the Fulton County Courthouse swung shut, sealing out the humid morning air and the chaotic noise of downtown Atlanta. Inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was sterile, cold, and entirely devoid of the glamorous drama my sister spent her life trying to manufacture. The fluorescent lights hummed a low, steady pitch overhead. The wooden benches in the gallery creaked slightly as I took my seat in the second row. David, my corporate attorney, sat beside me, holding a slim leather folder. We were not there to argue. We were there to watch the machinery of the justice system process the evidence we provided. Vanessa always treated every room like a soundstage. She thrived on audiences' gasps and applause. Today, the gallery was virtually empty. There were no cameras allowed past the security checkpoint. There were no producers waiting to capture her best angle. There were only a few bored law clerks, a tired bailiff, and a judge who handled dozens of financial fraud cases every single week. My mother arrived first. Patricia walked down the center aisle wearing a conservative charcoal suit, her posture rigid. Her expensive defense attorney guided her toward the defense table. She did not look back at me. She kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, clutching a small designer handbag like a shield. 10 minutes later, Vanessa entered through the same double doors. The transformation was striking. The lavish silk gowns and imported accessories were gone. She wore an inexpensive, ill-fitting navy blazer. Her public defender, a young man carrying a stack of disorganized files, directed her to a separate table. Mother and daughter sat less than 10 feet apart. They did not exchange a single glance. They did not speak. The toxic alliance that fueled their control over our relatives had disintegrated the moment the district attorney offered immunity in exchange for cooperation. The loyalty they constantly demanded from everyone else vanished when they faced genuine consequences. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge, a stern woman with a reputation for zero tolerance regarding financial exploitation, took her seat behind the elevated wooden bench. She did not offer warm greetings. She opened a thick manila folder and called my mother's case number. Patricia stood up. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the defense table. The prosecutor stood at the adjacent podium and read the terms of the proffer agreement into the official record. He detailed the unauthorized access to my dormant banking credentials. He listed the IP tracking logs proving the fraudulent credit application originated from Patricia's home router. He submitted the text messages where Patricia coordinated the transfer of $80,000 to Vanessa's joint account. Patricia's attorney stepped forward to offer a brief statement of mitigation. He painted my mother as an aging, misguided woman who succumbed to the overwhelming pressure of a demanding bride. He framed her cooperation with the state as an act of profound remorse. I listened to the narrative without reacting. It was a calculated legal fiction designed to keep her out of a state penitentiary, and it worked. The judge accepted the plea arrangement. She sentenced Patricia to 3 years of supervised probation. The gavel did not fall yet. The judge looked over the rim of her glasses and added 500 hours of mandatory community service. For a woman who spent the last 3 decades hosting elite charity luncheons in Buckhead, the sentence was a bespoke kind of devastation. Patricia would not serve time in a concrete cell, but her social currency was instantly bankrupt. The court mandate required manual labor. She would spend her weekends wearing a high-visibility vest, collecting litter along Georgia highways, or sorting donations in a sweltering municipal warehouse. Her country club friends would see the public court records. The isolation she weaponized against me for years was now her permanent reality. Patricia accepted the terms in a hollow, defeated whisper. She sat down, her carefully manicured public image reduced to ash. The judge flipped to the next file and called Vanessa's case. My sister stood, her shoulders rounded forward. The confidence that radiated from her during the wedding reception had evaporated. The young public defender cleared his throat and announced that his client was waiving her right to a trial. Facing the overwhelming digital evidence David compiled, combined with Patricia's sworn testimony against her fighting the charges, was a guaranteed prison sentence. The prosecutor approached the podium again. He outlined the wire fraud. He read the emails proving premeditation. He detailed the extravagant purchases Vanessa made using the stolen corporate funds. He laid out the timeline of the television pitch deck, proving the wedding was a staged commercial enterprise funded by stolen assets. There were no explosive courtroom revelations. There were no surprise witnesses bursting through the doors. The legal process was methodical, dry, and unrelenting. It stripped away all the emotional manipulation Vanessa relied on and reduced her actions to a series of undeniable facts. Vanessa pleaded guilty to the felony wire fraud charges. The judge leaned forward, clasping her hands over the legal documents. She did not hide her disdain. The court notes the defendant orchestrated a sophisticated financial crime to fund a superficial lifestyle, the judge stated, her voice carrying through the quiet room. You exploited your sister's corporate assets and attempted to monetize a minor child's medical history for a reality television broadcast. Your actions demonstrate a profound lack of moral judgment. Vanessa kept her head down, staring at the scuffed floorboards. The judge handed down the sentence. Vanessa avoided incarceration due to her lack of prior convictions, but the leniency ended there. She received 5 years of strict, supervised probation. Then came the financial reckoning. The court ordered full restitution of the stolen $80,000 payable directly to Apex Logistics. The judge detailed the mechanics of the repayment. Vanessa would face immediate wage garnishment. A significant percentage of every paycheck she earned for the next decade would be automatically intercepted and routed to my corporate holding accounts. She would never see a full bank deposit until the debt was satisfied in its entirety. The luxury vacations, the designer clothes, and the expensive dinners were permanently erased from her future. She was legally bound to a life of strict financial austerity. The court is also imposing severe financial and digital restrictions during your probationary period, the judge continued, reading from a secondary order. Derek's family law attorney helped draft. You are prohibited from opening any new lines of credit without express written permission from your probation officer. Furthermore, you are subject to a permanent binding injunction regarding your former stepdaughter. The judge picked up a separate sheet of paper containing the terms Derek demanded during his annulment proceedings. You are permanently banned from creating, posting, or monetizing any content related to Sophia. You will not mention her medical history, her image, or her name on any public or private platform. Any violation of this digital gag order will result in the immediate revocation of your probation and consecutive jail time. Do you understand these terms? Vanessa wiped a single silent tear from her cheek. Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. The gavel struck the sound block. The sharp wooden crack signaled the end of the line. The accountability was complete, mechanical, and irreversible. The bailiff dismissed the room. Patricia gathered her purse and walked quickly down the center aisle, disappearing through the heavy oak doors without looking at her daughter. Vanessa turned around slowly from the defense table. She scanned the empty gallery until her eyes locked onto mine. She stood there, gripping the edge of the wooden partition. I knew exactly what she was looking for. She wanted me to show some kind of emotion. She wanted me to gloat, to smile, or to hurl an insult at her. If I showed anger, she could tell herself I was a vindictive monster. If I showed pity, she could convince herself that we shared a familial bond that survived the betrayal. She needed me to give her a reaction so she could cast herself in a new narrative. I gave her nothing. I did not smile. I did not frown. I looked at her with the exact same neutral expression I wore when I tied the canvas catering apron around my waist at her wedding reception. I simply sat in the wooden pew and watched the legal system enforce the boundaries my family refused to respect. David closed his leather folder and stood up. We have everything we need, he noted quietly. The corporate accounts will process the initial garnishment order by the end of the month. I stood up, smoothing the fabric of my suit jacket. I broke eye contact with Vanessa and turned toward the exit. I walked out of the courtroom, leaving her standing alone in front of the judge's bench. The humid Georgia air hit me as I stepped out of the courthouse and onto the bustling downtown sidewalk. The legal battle was finished, but the final chapter of my life remained. I needed to ensure the barriers I built today would withstand the test of time, and I needed to handle the one unexpected alliance forged in the fires of my sister's deception. 6 months later, my morning routine began with a cup of black coffee and a review of the weekly financial ledgers. I sat at my mahogany desk, watching the early autumn sun rise over the Atlanta skyline. My corporate accountant sent over the standard payroll and accounts receivable files. Near the bottom of the spreadsheet, a specific line item caught my attention. It was an automated deposit for $182.40. The routing number traced back to the payroll department of a regional home goods retailer. The memo line read, "Court-ordered restitution." Vanessa was paying me back. The judge had ordered full repayment of the stolen funds. My sister did not have $80,000 sitting in a bank account. She possessed zero liquid assets after the reality television network clawed back their development advance and the wedding vendors drained whatever remained. The court mandated a strict wage garnishment. A significant percentage of her earnings went straight into my corporate holding accounts before she ever saw a dime. I looked at the deposit amount. $182 meant Vanessa was working an entry-level retail job earning an hourly wage. She spent her days folding towels, organizing display shelves, and answering to a store manager. The woman who planned to become a famous television star now clocked in for minimum wage shifts. Her designer silk gowns and imported accessories were replaced by a polyester uniform and a plastic name tag. She could not afford luxury vacations or expensive dinners. The legal system stripped away her illusion of wealth and forced her to live within the harsh reality of her own choices. I closed the spreadsheet. I did not feel a rush of victory. I felt profound peace. The constant hum of anxiety that used to follow me whenever my family was involved had vanished. I secured permanent no-contact orders against both Vanessa and Patricia shortly after the sentencing hearing. The legal boundaries were ironclad. They were prohibited from calling my phone, sending emails, or approaching my residence. They could not use third parties to deliver messages. If my sister or my mother attempted to contact me, a judge would revoke their probation and send them directly to a county jail cell. For the first time in 31 years, my phone was quiet. I no longer woke up expecting a manufactured crisis. I did not receive frantic text messages demanding my obedience. The toxic cycle of manipulation and guilt was broken. I built a fortress of paper and court mandates around my life, and the silence inside it was beautiful. My mother experienced a different kind of silence. Patricia avoided prison by testifying against her favorite daughter, but her plea deal carried a heavy social cost. Felony wire fraud convictions are public record. In the elite circles of Buckhead society, gossip travels faster than a speeding ticket. The details of her crime circulated through her country club, her charity boards, and her affluent neighborhood. Her former friends discovered that the wealthy, gracious matriarch was actually a thief who stole from her own child to fund a fake television pilot. The invitations stopped arriving. The charity committees removed her name from their letterheads. The women she spent decades trying to impress politely turned their backs when she entered a room. Patricia could not afford to maintain her large house in Alpharetta. The legal fees from her high-priced defense attorney drained her savings. She sold the property and moved into a downsized, modest apartment complex outside the city limits. She lived in isolation. Her sentence also required 500 hours of community service. My mother, who used to dictate seating charts for extravagant galas, spent her weekends wearing a neon orange safety vest. She picked up trash along the shoulders of Georgia highways and sorted donated clothing in unair-conditioned municipal warehouses. The court did not care about her ruined manicures or her complaints about the heat. She was forced to perform the exact kind of manual labor she always deemed beneath her. Without an audience to manipulate or a daughter to control, Patricia was left alone with the wreckage of her own ego. At 10 o'clock, a brief knock sounded on my office door. Derek walked in holding a leather binder. He wore a sharp, tailored suit and carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had weathered a severe storm and survived. He handed me the quarterly logistics report for the Southeastern Division. His numbers were excellent. Derek remained a valued regional director at Apex Logistics. We never discussed the wedding. We never discussed the annulment. We maintained a strict professional boundary inside the building. He earned his position through hard work, and I respected his dedication to the firm. The annulment finalized months ago. Derek severed all legal and financial ties to my sister. He sold the luxury penthouse they briefly shared and purchased a quiet, comfortable house in a good school district for his daughter. Sophia was safe. The emergency custody orders remained in place. My sister was permanently banned from monetizing the teenager's image or mentioning her medical history online. Without a camera pointed at her face, Sophia began to heal. The severe panic attacks diminished. She joined a local art class and started spending time with friends her own age. I did not insert myself into their daily lives. I did not want to replace Vanessa as a savior figure. I offered quiet support from a distance. I instructed my financial advisors to establish a secure college savings account in Sophia's name. I seeded the fund with a generous initial deposit. Derek did not know about the account yet. I planned to hand him the transfer documents when Sophia graduated high school. The teenager deserved a chance to build a future free from exploitation, and I intended to ensure she had the resources to do it. Derek finished his quarterly presentation and walked out of my office. The glass door clicked shut behind him. I stood up from my desk and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The midday sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown Atlanta. The city moved at its usual frantic pace, a maze of ambition and commerce. I looked down at the streets below, tracing the path of the delivery trucks bearing my company logo. I spent years believing that surviving my family meant enduring their abuse in silence. I thought taking the high road meant letting them rewrite reality while I swallowed the pain. When they handed me that catering apron, they expected me to play the role of the broken, subservient sister. They wanted me to scream, to cry, and to look unstable for their hidden cameras. True justice did not require screaming. It did not require a public social media war or a bitter shouting match in a crowded ballroom. Revenge is messy and driven by emotion. Accountability is cold, precise, and undeniable. I fought their illusion using data contracts and the strict mechanics of the law. I let the truth dismantle their lies. They built a trap designed to destroy my reputation and steal my livelihood. Instead, the trap snapped shut on their own fingers. I touched the glass of the window. The surface felt cool against my fingertips. My company was thriving, my assets were secure, my peace of mind was permanent. I stepped out of the role my family designed for me, and I left them behind in the ashes of their own deceit. I was successful, protected, and completely free.